Hey guys, I'm Tiffany.
I'm Stephanie.
We're Sisters of the South, coming to you with another true crime video today. Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone to please hit the like button and subscribe for more true crime content every week, which is absolutely
Free.
and hit the little notification bell so that you know when we have a new show coming to you. And please share with your friends if you deem it worth sharing. We also want to give a little shout out to our friends over at SoFly. SoFly. And I'm going to let Stephanie tell you about them now.
SoFly is a small Houston family-owned company that specializes in embroidery and laser work. They will take in accessories such as beanies, caps, hoodies, aprons, and they will embroidery your logo or anything special you want to put on it. So we think they're great. They do our merchandise, and we think that you will love them too. So if you will try them out, I know that you'll love them. And what we're going to do now is show you a video on a little bit of their work. So here we go.
All right, guys, I hope you liked the video, and I'm going to let Stephanie get started with the story.
Yeah, let's do this today. We are going to jump into our time machines, but better yet, let's jump on a bull moose today and mosey on back to the year of 1912. You will understand soon enough why we're going to take a trip on a bull moose. So let's get started. Saddle up. Let's get ready for the ride. Woo! I love a moose. They're so majestic. So let's do some coloring for the time and era of 1912. The number one song for 1912 was When I Was 21 and You Were 16 by Harry McDonough and the American Quartet. I kind of giggled to myself about that because in 2024, if this song came out, a lot of eyebrows would be raised.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, so I kind of thought, boy, we've come a very long way. One of the top grossing films was All for a Girl, directed by Frederick A. Thompson. April 15th, the Titanic sank, killing more than 1,500 people. Thomas Edison introduces the home kinetoscope, a home film projector which uses a 22 millimeter print consisting of 3 rows of frames. So again, we've come a long way because now we just pick up our phone and hit a button. Back then, they actually needed a machine to do this. So I found that a little bit comical as well. And the average salary in the United States was $750 per year, which is equivalent to $24,407 today. And a loaf of bread back then cost around 5 cents.
Which we can't buy anything for 5 cents.
Nothing. So 5 cents. I was thinking, how many loaves of bread could I buy now? I mean, that's cheap. Now, I don't know if that was considered cheap back then, but
well, no. I mean,
because the ingredients to make it had to be super cheap, for 5 cents a loaf. But I thought that was interesting as well. We're going to talk about Theodore Roosevelt today. He was born on October 27th, 1858 at 28 East 20th Street in Manhattan, New York. He was the second of 4 children born to Martha Stewart Bullock and businessman Theodore Roosevelt Sr. Roosevelt's youth was shaped by his poor health and debilitating asthma attacks, which terrorized him and his parents. Doctors had no cure. Nevertheless, he was energetic and mischievously inquisitive. His long life interest in zoology began at the age of 7 when he saw a dead seal at a market.
Wow.
I was trying to think, what in the heck kind of market was he at to see a dead seal? I don't know if they used the blubber from a seal or the skin of a seal for something back then. I don't know, but I thought that was kind of odd.
I didn't even think about the market. I was just thinking that would not make me go into any kind of career wanting to see dead animals.
It wouldn't even make me interested.
No.
Seeing a I was traumatized at a young age going into a market and I saw dead pig heads and chicken feet that would hang in the meat.
Where did Mom and Dad take you?
We lived in Stafford. Texas, and I was like 4, and that traumatized me for the longest time. I didn't understand. I get it now, but I did not understand. I had never seen anything like that.
They never took me anywhere like that.
Well, this was
I'm not complaining.
This was back in the mid 70s, so
Oh, and I
you don't
wasn't
see it now,
born.
but you weren't born yet. So, and it made a lifelong impression. It's one of my first memories. So it's weird.
You
And I
still
remember
eat
the
bacon?
smell. I still eat bacon, but I remember the smell of that meat market. It just, I can smell it right now, actually. And so it was
Ew.
odd. So I found it kind of comical, but he viewed it as a wonderful thing. I viewed it as kind of traumatic.
Most people do.
So after obtaining the seal head, Roosevelt and cousins formed the Roosevelt Museum of Natural History. Having learned the skill of taxidermy, he filled his makeshift museum with animals he killed or caught. By age 9, he recorded his observation in a paper entitled The Natural History of Insects. So it sounds like he's already building his life structure at such an early age. It almost literally sounds like a calling. And he started really young, building what I would call a resume. But of course, he's too young to realize that's what's happening.
No, he's just doing what he loves.
Yes. So Roosevelt assumed the presidency at age 42 and is the youngest person to become U.S. president. As a leader of the progressive movement, he championed his Square Deal domestic policies, which called for fairness for all citizens, breaking bad trust, and regulating railroads, as well as puring foods and drugs. Roosevelt prioritized conservation and established national parks, forests, and monuments to preserve U.S. natural resources. In foreign policy, he focused on Central America, beginning construction of the Panama Canal. Roosevelt expanded the Navy and sent the Great White Fleet on a world tour to project naval power. His successful efforts to end the Russo-Japanese War won him the 1906 Nobel Peace Prize, the first American to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Roosevelt was elected the 26th president in 1901 and would continue his presidential term until 1909, which is 8 years. 3 years later, on October 14, 1912, as a former Republican president making a bid to return to the White House, Theodore Roosevelt's opening line was hardly remarkable for a presidential campaign speech. "Friends, I shall ask you to be as quiet as possible." His second line, however, was a bombshell. "I don't know whether you fully understand that I have just been shot." Clearly, Roosevelt had buried the lead. The horrified audience in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin auditorium gasped as the former president unbuttoned his vest to reveal his blood-stained shirt. "It takes more than that to kill a bull moose," the wounded candidate assured them. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a bullet-riddled 50-page speech. Holding up his prepared remarks, which had 2 big holes blown through each page.
Wow.
Roosevelt continued, "Fortunately, I had my manuscript so that you could see I was going to make a long speech. And there is a bullet. There is where the bullet went through, and it probably saved me from it going into my heart. The bullet is now in me, so I cannot make a very long speech, but I will try my best." I don't think that would have stopped him from making a long speech at all if you've ever seen him speak.
But good thing he talked a lot, you know?
Yeah.
If it had been a short speech, he may not have made it.
Yeah, that's very true. And I'm going to say this. He reminds me a lot of Trump. He's got
Talks a lot.
gusto. He talks a lot. He means what he says, and he's going to kind of go loud and proud. And that was Roosevelt all the way. He was very beloved, and I think he was beloved because of that. But I really think that Roosevelt loved to hear his self-talk. So in this case,
Sure.
possibly was a good thing for him. Only 2 days before, the editor-in-chief of the Outlook characterized Roosevelt as an electric battery of inexhaustible energy. And for the next 90 minutes, the 53-year-old former president proved it. "I give you my word, I do not care a rap about being shot." Not a rap, he claimed.
A rap.
See, now rap is completely different than what rap meant back then.
I'm going to start using that, guys. I don't give a rap.
I don't give a rap. I think that's where rat's ass might have come from. Someone just kind of threw that in there. Maybe someone misunderstood it.
That is better than what I usually say.
Yeah, me too, for sure. Few could doubt him. Although his voice weakened and his breath shortened, Roosevelt glared at his nervous aides whenever they begged him to stop speaking or position themselves around the podium to catch him if he collapsed. Only with the speech completed did he agree to visit the hospital. So he's like, look, this bullet didn't even stop me for a second. I'm moving on. I got things to do. I'm too busy for this mess.
I got things to say, guys.
I got to keep going. So, I mean, I'll give him kudos to that. You can't stop this guy. If he's got a job to do, you want him on your team. Okay, because he's going to keep going regardless. And I think I kind of relate to him on that, because I know that, sometimes I just, something's killing me or whatever's hurting, and I just can't stop till I get this job done. And Roosevelt had that in him, and so it's really admirable. The shooting had occurred just after 8 p.m. as Roosevelt entered his car outside the Gilpatrick Hotel. As he stood up in the open-air automobile and waved his hat with his right hand to the crowd, a flash from a Colt revolver 5 feet away lit up the night. The candidate's stenographer quickly put the would-be assassin in a half Nelson and grabbed the assailant's right wrist to prevent him from firing a second shot.
Nice.
He got lucky that this guy knew what he was doing, right? The well-wishing crowd morphed into a bloodthirsty pack, raining blows on the shooter and shouting, "Kill him!" According to an eyewitness, one man was the coolest and least excited of anyone in the frenzied mob. The man who had been propelled to the Oval Office after an assassin felled President William McKinley bellowed out, "Don't hurt him! Bring him here! I want to see him." Roosevelt asked the shooter, "What did you do it for?" With no answer forthcoming, he said, "Oh, what's the use? Turn him over to the police." Although there were no outward signs of blood, the former president reached inside his heavy overcoat and felt a dime-sized bullet hole on the right side of his chest. "He pinked me," Roosevelt told a party official. So he pinked me, I guess, means pink, like, a bullet, like a bullet sound.
Okay.
I'm learning a lot of new words for this time and era
like
today. Yeah, that's a lot of coloring.
Yeah.
I think that's like pink and red or something.
Sure.
So Roosevelt coughs into his hand 3 times. Not seeing any telltale sign of blood, he determined that the bullet hadn't penetrated his lungs. That's one of those.
Who needs a doctor?
Who needs a doctor? Guy had, he had survived asthma attacks when he was younger. So you would think he would, think, I need to make sure my lungs are okay. But he's not bleeding from his mouth. So he thinks he's not been hit in the lung. So Roosevelt was a lot of things. A doctor, I know he was not. So it's kind of funny. An accompanying doctor naturally told the driver to head directly to the hospital, but Colonel Roosevelt gave different marching orders. "You get me to that speech." X-rays taken after the campaign event showed the bullet lodged against Roosevelt's 4th right rib on an upward path to his heart. Fortunately, the projectile had been slowed by his dense overcoat, steel-reinforced eyeglass case, and hefty speech squeezed into his inner right jacket pocket. Roosevelt dictated the telegram to his wife that said he was in excellent shape and that the trivial wound wasn't a particle more serious than one of the injuries any of the boys used continually to be having. Even before the shooting, the 1912 presidential campaign had been a racious one, with the former Republican president challenging his party's standard bearer and his hand-picked successor, incumbent William Howard Taft. The political infighting, so fierce that barbed wire concealed by patriotic bunting defended the podium at the Republican convention, tore the grand old party apart. Roosevelt went rogue and ran under the banner of the Progressive Party, nicknamed the Bull Moose Party. blasted by political opponents and the elements of the press for being a power-hungry traitor willing to break the tradition of two-term presidencies, Roosevelt told the Milwaukee audience that the campaign's inflamed political rhetoric contributed to the shooting. It is a very natural thing, he said, that weak and vicious minds should be inflamed to acts of violence by the kind of awful mendacity and abuse that have been heaped upon me for the last 3 months by the papers. The weak mind responsible for the assassination attempt belonged to 36-year-old John Schrank, an unemployed New York City saloon keeper. A handwritten screen found in his pocket reflected the troubled thoughts of a paranoid schizophrenic. To the people of the United States, Schrank had written, in a dream, I saw President McKinley sit up in his coffin, pointing at a man in a monk's attire in whom I recognized as Theodore Roosevelt. The dead president said, "This is my murderer, avenge my death." Schrank also claimed he acted to defend the two-term tradition of American presidents. I did not intend to kill the citizen Roosevelt, the shooter said at his trial. I intended to kill Theodore Roosevelt, the third-termer. Schrank pled guilty. He was determined to be insane and was confined for life in a Wisconsin state asylum. Doctors determined it was safer to leave the bullet embedded deep in Roosevelt's chest than to operate, although the shooting exacerbated his chronic rheumatoid arthritis for the rest of his life. Even though the attempted assassination unleashed a wave of sympathy for Roosevelt, led to an easy victory by Democrat Woodrow Wilson on Election Day. Roosevelt came in second with 27% of the vote, the highest percentage of any third-party candidate in American history.
Wow.
Just for the record, because I was real curious as to when did only 2 terms come in, because
Yeah.
I knew that this had kind of been wavering throughout the early 1900s, but the 22nd Amendment of the Amendment of 1951 to the Constitution of the United States effectively limits to only 2 terms as President of the United States. So, yeah, that came later on after Roosevelt.
Right.
So I'm kind of glad, to be honest, that they can only run for 2 terms. I actually think they should push that on over to all the representatives in our government because they
Absolutely.
just hang out way too long. They become complacent and pretty much just collect a paycheck and cause chaos. So I think that they really need to give 2 terms to everybody that comes through there. And I don't know why that hasn't been handled, but that's my opinion. But yeah, that's what happened to Roosevelt, the bull moose.
The bull moose.
He was pretty dang tough. And yeah, I admire him even more. And I know that there's some speeches on YouTube that you can go on and watch him. I mean, he would just frail his arms and bang on the pulpit, and he was real passionate about his beliefs. But he did do a lot of preservation to our national parks and wildlife, and for that I admire him greatly. So we just wanted to give a big shout out to him, and since this is inauguration month, we deemed it appropriate to do that, so we wanted to bring this story to you. So really hope you enjoyed it, but until our next episode, remember to see the good and stay imperfectly perfect.
Bye, guys.